Good afternoon, everybody. This is John Tabor from UDS. Thank you for joining this afternoon. I appreciate it. Today we're going to be talking about prioritization of productivity. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Does anybody, if you can respond, that would be helpful. All right, great. Let's get started. This is just some of you I have not met yet. I'm new to UDS, started the 1st of December, but I'm getting around and getting to know more and more of you. So this is just a little about my background, so you get to know a little bit about me. So I'm looking forward to meeting all of you in person. In F&I, there's so much to do and there's so little time. And this slide I thought was perfect because it really kind of demonstrates what goes on in the F&I office today. You wear a lot of hats. There's a lot going on. There's always information that needs to go out. People are coming at you. Things need to get done. There's just not a lot of free time in F&I. And what we're going to be talking about today is how to get control of that a little bit better. People talk about managing their time, and the reality is that we can't manage time, but we can prioritize our task and what we're doing to be more productive. So I've got a question for you. If you ever feel like you spend all day, managing one crisis after another, or maybe you've had one of those days where you feel pretty tired and drained at the end of the day, and you look at your log and you haven't made any money at all. Well, chances are, if you've answered yes to either one of those, you've been spending most of your time in that day usually on the urgent and very little of your time on the important. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Important activities have an outcome that leads to us achieving our goals, in our professional life or personal, and the urgent activities demand immediate attention, but they're not always important, and most of the time they have to do with somebody else's goals or somebody else's priorities. But they are the ones that we end up concentrating on. So we're going to talk about a little bit difference between the two. And I'm interested, does anybody know who said this? What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. Anybody have a guess? Okay. It was Dwight D. Eisenhower. And I'm sure most of you have heard of him. He, during World War II, if you haven't heard of him, during World War II, he was the Allied Supreme Commander of all forces in Europe, which I guess that job description was saving the free world. And he was also President of the United States in between Harry Truman and John Kennedy. He was a pretty busy guy, and he had a lot coming at him. He had to make a lot of decisions. He had to process a lot of information. And he came up with something that helped him handle all of the activities, all of the tasks, all the information that was coming at him on a daily basis. And they call it the Eisenhower Matrix. Now, and what it's really designed to do is try to determine what's urgent, what's important, what's both, or what's neither. And some of you may not have heard of the Eisenhower Matrix, but you may have heard of a guy named Stephen Covey. And Stephen Covey became pretty well known in the 80s and 90s for helping business people get organized. And he built his system based on the Eisenhower Matrix. And it's pretty simple. It's what's important and urgent, what's important but not urgent, what's not important but it's urgent, and what's not important and not urgent, and how we navigate through these things. So, how do you tell the difference? Let's start out with what's important and urgent. It's pretty simple to designate what's here. These tasks, require immediate attention, and they usually work towards us fulfilling our long-term F&I goals, which is, for us, it's 1350 PVR and 2 products per retail. But, the way to think about these tasks are things that are directly related to us to delivering a vehicle right now. So they're like, introducing ourselves to a customer, or presenting a menu, or, consulting with the sales desk. getting a call back or making a call on a waiting deal, getting a deal billed. Maybe the printer runs out of paper and the GM wants to talk to us. Well, some of the tasks here, a few of these don't actually have to do with a deal right now. And with a little prior planning, we can take them out of these important and urgent tasks. Things like getting a deal billed, we can either do it right after we talk to the customer, or perhaps we can do it at another time. The GM wants to talk to us. Maybe we could say, hey, listen, I've got people stacked up waiting to get in here. Do you mind if I should be done, say, around 3:30 or 4 o'clock? Could we talk then, or is it something that has to be addressed right now? And if the printer's out of paper, shame on us. Our processes sometimes help us. If we have things in place when we get to work in the morning, we kind of do a checklist to make sure that we're all ready to go, and things like running out of paper shouldn't happen to us, and they should stay out of the important but urgent box. Let's move on. If we go to the non-urgent but important, these are interesting things in here, because these are the things that usually help us grow professionally. They're the things that lead to us making more money. And, they're things like doing some planning, evaluating our F&I log. I think somebody just put us on hold. Who that? I think I got it. All right, well, hopefully you guys can still, that went away for most of you. Evaluating our performance by using our log. Training, taking time out to, spend time on webinars or go to training. Those things help us grow and professionally and help us develop. Spending time at the sales desk and increasing our partnership and relationship there. Staying on top of any product changes that may come along. Videoing our presentations for self-evaluation. Seeing what our tendencies are, seeing how we deliver our word tracks. And marketing products outside the F&I office and following up with our customers. These activities aren't demanding. They don't need our immediate attention, and because of that, we tend to say, they're important. I agree, John, but I don't have time. I'm going to put those off. I'll get to them. I know they're important, but the problem with that is that they usually, we never do it because later never comes. In F&I, we have something that I like to call a present bias. Everything is right now. It's inherent. We have to prioritize our activities in quadrant 2. Otherwise, we get stuck in that urgent and we never get around to doing these things. And if we don't, there's some serious consequences. One of the things that I see, and it really bothers me as I go from dealership to dealership sometimes, is that I'll see somebody as, a salesperson or an F&I person or even a sales manager that, takes maybe a year and a half of training and applies it to a 10 or 15-year career. They just kind of stay flat. A salesperson gets to 18 to 20 cars a month, maybe even 15, and they never really get past that. Or an F&I person plateaus in their performance as well. You see it all the time. So let's talk about something. Number 3 is the not important but urgent. And this is where most F&I people spend their time. These things are not important but they're urgent. They usually don't support our goals or our priorities. As a matter of fact, these things are usually interruptions in our day. And what they end up doing most of the time when we really take a minute to look at them is that they support somebody else's priorities and somebody else's goals. Things like, phone calls, text messages from employees, coworkers who need a favor. They come into the office, hey, I need help with this, I need help with that. We correct information from a particular salesman during a deal, and we tend to do it more than once. Or perhaps, we end up doing something ourselves because it's easier than getting the person responsible to do it. We've all had people walked into our office, and it always seems to happen at the worst possible moment when we're just about to go get a customer and bring them in. You know what I'm talking about, those types of situations. Paperwork request, hey, I need a copy of this, can you get me that? You know, some of the reports we have to do aren't, you know, important, but they tend to be urgent because we put them off, and some of the meetings that we go to. You know, we spend too much time here, but the reason we do that is because it makes us feel better. These things are really tangible. I can check them off. I know that you know, somebody comes in, they need something, I give it to them. This needs to be handled, no problem. Could you talk, can you find out what's going on with this deal? Let me look at it and I'll tell you. And we have to decide, you know, is it important or is it just urgent? Is it supporting my goals and my priorities, or am I supporting somebody else's goals and priorities? Now, I'm not saying that, you know, you need to be a jerk at F&I. But what I am suggesting is that we start to look at this a little bit differently, and maybe perhaps use this matrix to help us decide when we should be addressing something and when we shouldn't. You know, here's one of the interesting things about these activities in quadrant 3. If we say to somebody who comes in and says, hey, what's going on with the Smith deal, and we're doing something else that's important and urgent, pertains to a deal that's in front of us right now, I may say, listen, I don't have time to do that right now. I'll be glad to look into it for you later, but I have a customer coming in. Or somebody comes in and asks something from us and asks a request or a favor, and we say, hey, listen, I can't get to it right now, but when I finish with the customer or later this afternoon, I'll be glad to help you. The good news is about those people is that if you turn them down once in a while, they'll start going somewhere else, and somebody else will help them support their goals and their priorities, and they'll quit coming to you. Or when you are addressing it, it'll be in your time when it works best for you. You know, you're spending a lot of time in quadrant 3 is when you get let go for lack of production, and people refer to you after you're gone as that nice F&I person that got fired a while ago, or perhaps that person that always seems overwhelmed. If you're spending a lot of time here, usually you can determine it because your production's flat, you're tired all the time, you're grumpy, you don't like your job as much as you used to. You have that I have to go to work instead of that I get to go to work attitude. That tells you that you're spending a lot of time on not important things, but things that are urgent. Let's move on. 4, not urgent and not important. I guess you can kind of figure out where I'm going with this. These activities aren't important, they're not urgent, they don't help us achieve our goals or develop as an F&I manager. Basically, they're screwing around, but we'll call them distractions. You know, they're personal texting or phone calls, internet searches that aren't related to work, social media, water cooler talk. You know, you're not a machine, I get it. You have to socialize a little bit at work, but, you know, for the example here, we're using a 10-hour work day. And I would recommend that you keep this stuff to about 5% of your day, or about 30 minutes a day to distractions or things that aren't productive. And that's really probably enough for most F&I professionals these days. So, quick review. Things in 1. Activities in this area need to be based on creating or completing a deal whenever possible. And really kind of focus on those. These are the most important and most urgent things that we can be doing at work. Everything else is a distraction or an interruption. 2, these are the things that help us grow and make more money. You know, and we have to be purposeful about how we make time for these things. You know, we have to set time aside for it, and it has to be important to us, and we have to make it a priority. Remember, later may not ever come. The things in 3, these are really productivity killers, no question about it. They usually steal time from Q2, and they also help us rationalize spending more time in those non-urgent and non-important things, because we're having a bad day and we want to reward ourselves by kind of relaxing a little bit, walking around, screwing around, or whatever it is. And we have to be careful of that. And then those things in 4. These are the things that, you know, they make us feel good and they're nice and they're fun, but they're like a reverse gear to productivity. And like I said, as Nancy Reagan said, just say no to activities in Q4. So, You got to ask yourself, am I doing this because it's important to my goals at F&I or because it's urgent? It's just a good test. When somebody asks you to do something or you have you've got something that needs to be done, ask yourself that question. If you can start to recognize the difference between the two, it really helps you prioritize your time and it'll help you be more productive. And focus as much as you can on the not urgent but important tasks in Q4. Find times for those things to look at yourself, evaluate self-development, and determine how you might be able to get better at what you do in being an F&I manager. And at the end of the day, you'll be a little bit more like Ike. Anybody have any questions? Comments?
Not so far.
All right, well, that's it for today. I appreciate everybody participating. If you'd like a copy of this, please feel free to email me at jtabor@udsdealerservices.com, and I'd be glad to send you a copy. Thanks, everybody.